So good morning, everyone. Today's Monday, May 24th, 2021. The time is 9:01 a.m. This is a special meeting agenda with our Airport and Airport Advisory Board calling this meeting to order. Attending Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Fillios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Moving right on, our first item is a presentation by Ed Wagner about the Coeur d'Alene Skeet and Trap Club. And how much time, where's Ed? How much time do you need, Ed?
About 5 or 7 minutes.
Oh, you're fine. You're perfectly fine.
We're good?
Go right ahead, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ed Wagner. I'm the president of the Coeur d'Alene Skeet and Trap Club. And we appreciate your time to listen to our concerns for your future proposed sale of the land that we currently occupy and we feel will really affect our future of our club. At that point, I'd really like to save some time. I'd like to turn the meeting over to Steve Thurman. He's a board member. He'll give the presentation, and he'll be open for questions after. I will pass out a packet of what more detail to what he's speaking to for your information.
Thank you. Go right ahead, Steve.
Thank you. Well, good morning, Commissioners. Again, I'm a board member at Coeur d'Alene Skeet and Trap Club. My wife of 37 years, Michelle, gave our first presentation along with Ava, who's back here. Michelle was born in Coeur d'Alene. Her family homesteaded here in the 1880s. She has deep roots in this area. You would recognize her maiden name. Her relatives have been here and are influential in this area. I've lived here since 1995. We have owned a small business for the past 26 years. I worked previously for a Fortune 500 company. I was pretty successful with them. And when they gave me a double promotion, country club membership and relocation to a major city, Michelle and I decided it was time to move, but not where they wanted. We moved to Idaho. We didn't want to raise our 3 children in that kind of lifestyle. We wanted to raise them with the same values that Michelle and I have been lucky enough to be taught, and for which Coeur d'Alene is becoming famous. We are. Look at all the people moving in here. Since making that decision, our 3 children have all graduated summa cum laude from college. They've done very well. Our youngest son is finishing up with his master's degree in physics. He went the traditional route, 2 years NIC, undergraduate degree, 4.0, summa cum laude from University of Idaho, and then he's in graduate school, and he'll finish up with his master's thesis in July. And he's moving back here. So the good news for him, he can work online. So, but our youngest son, again, Grant, he shot for Coeur d'Alene High School in 2012. First time we went to state. He won trap, skeet, and sporting clays, first high school student to ever do that. He won all 3 events. Went on to the Western Regionals in Cody, Wyoming, and then was invited by the U.S. Olympic team in Colorado Springs to come and shoot with them. And he had to make a tough decision. Did he want to go that route or go to college? And he so chose to go to college. So to continue on with us and why we're here presently. We're all here today to help resolve issues that pertain to the sale of the 60-acre parcel subdivided into 3 20-acre segments. I will be discussing the 27-acre, which is the footprint that our club is on, impacted by the Coeur d'Alene Skeet and Trap Club. Since 1965, we have leased this section of open land from the Coeur d'Alene Airport, which is legally sponsored by Kootenai County. For 56 years, the club has been an outstanding tenant to both the airport and county. Sale of this land would not only destroy this long-standing community asset, but also hold the county liable for costly expenses. Before this land could be put up for sale or repurposed as a non-shooting range, a firing range reclamation and cleanup operation would have to be performed as required by the EPA, and it's right here, has to be required by the EPA. During the meeting on April 19th, we presented a packet to you, which included a recent estimate of $2 to $3 million to complete this procedure from the Colorado-based company MT2. They're an environmental cleanup company. In response to Commissioner Duncan's concern about the value of the land being decreased due to the environmental impact, Mr. Kjergaard responded with, quote, We will make sure in the bidding documents that we say a shooting club is the current tenant. The purchaser will be responsible for any environmental cleanup, that's unquote. Contrary to this claim, the facts are that any environmental remediation will greatly impact the fair market value of this property. The sponsor of the airport property, which is Kootenai County, is fully responsible for the environmental cleanup. This is supported by the following evidence. According to the Federal Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act, CERCLA, in general, property owners are liable for expenses associated with removal and cleanup of land contamination. The Airport Cooperation Research Program, ACRP, which is here, states that the airport sponsor is responsible for the overall implementation of the National Environment Policy Act, NEPA, as well as other federal environmental laws and regulations. The airport sponsor is ultimately responsible for ensuring environmental compliance of the tenants and users of airport property. That's a quote, unquote. This is all covered in NEPA. Implementing instructions for airport actions, environmental desk reference for airport actions, and environmental impacts, policies, and procedures. These requirements are made relevant by the following facts. There are over 26 million pitch targets that contain benzopyrene C20H12, a group 1 carcinogen, which have accumulated since 1965. In 2012, we switched over to biodegradable targets. There are over 5 million of these targets on the ground which do not contain these chemicals. They're just layered on top of this. In addition, in addition to the benzopyrene carcinogen, over 140 tons of lead is on the property. That's since 2014, the last time we fully mined it, over 140 ton of lead. But our practice of periodically shot mining and recycling the lead fits perfectly with the EPA's, right here, best management practices for lead at outdoor shooting ranges. So we've been doing this, at least the lead portion, we've been harvesting it and recycling it, and that fits right in with what shooting ranges are supposed to do. As stated early in your packets, which we presented to you on 4/19/2021, was an estimate from MT2 that 20,000 cubic yards of soil need to be removed and then replaced with uncontaminated soil, 20,000 cubic yards. The fair market value, which must be established by an acceptable appraiser to the FAA for this property, considering the environmental impact, will be in the negative numbers. In essence, it will cost more to clean up the site than the fair market value. So in essence, a new purchaser has to be told that they would have to remove, properly dispose, and replace 20,000 cubic yards of soil before they could develop this parcel. So, considering these facts and regulations, we propose the following viable solution for the future management of this property. The airport releases the approximate 27 acres to the county. This would fall under ACRP Report 47, Section 3.2.4, land releases. The county enters into a 25-year lease with the club. Land leases are generally 20 to 30-year terms with 5 to 10-year extensions. And this is in the ACRP Report 47, 6.2.4, lease term determination. The club applies for a certificate of recognition with the EPA for best management practices at outdoor shooting ranges. The club will generate a written environmental stewardship plan as required by the EPA. The club then will submit an environmental stewardship plan to the lead shot coordinator in EPA Region 2. Upon approval, the club will receive a certificate of recognition from the EPA. The club will implement the approved plan. Excuse me. The club will establish a 25-cent per round environmental cleanup fund in perpetuity. This fund is to be used only for environmental cleanup. As long as the site is left undisturbed and we continue to use EPA BMP guidelines, the environmental impact is negligible and fully endorsed by the EPA. In other words, if we remain at our current location and operate as a shotgun range, any site mitigation will not be necessary. Conversely, any sale of repurposing of this land would require extreme additional costs for the environmental cleanup, resulting, we believe, in a financial loss for the county. For 56 years, this property has been a shotgun shooting range. It has served the county well during this time. The intrinsic value of land owned by the county is not just the sum of its parts. It is not necessarily a commodity to be sold to the highest bidder. In some cases, its value is derived from the use and pleasure the county residents receive from its existence. Open spaces, parks, and public recreational land uses, such as the shotgun range, are vital to the health of this community. It should always remain a shotgun shooting range and continue to serve the thousands of community members who enjoyed it over the years. And then, in closing, we just received a letter from Governor Little. And what it is, it's pertaining to the Idaho State Champion Trap Shoot, which was, I believe, held in Pocatello. And here's what he says. Dear friends, the First Lady and I welcome you to the 2021 Idaho State Trap Shooting Association Annual Championship event. Trap shooting has a storied history in Idaho with records of champions dating back more than 100 years. It is a lifetime sport that families can participate in together and one that everyone, young and old, can appreciate. As you participate in this competition, remember that you are the successors of a proud Idaho tradition. At this event, we celebrate our constitutionally guaranteed right to bear arms. With that right also comes great responsibility, a fact you all recognize. Thank you for passing on your values to the next generation of sportsmen and for helping to make Idaho a safe place for us, our children, and our grandchildren. Best wishes for a safe, successful, and fun event this year. I'm proud to see the tradition of trap shooting continue in Idaho. Sincerely, Brad Little, Governor. And you will receive that. Ed's got packets for you of this presentation. So that's all I have open if you have any questions for me.
Any questions, Fred?
It's not just lead shot, is it?
No,
It's
see,
lead-
that's what,
Lead dust.
it's lead, well, lead dust is, the carcinogen is the same, the chemical, benzopyrene, is the same chemical in tobacco and cigarettes.
Right.
That causes cancer. And because of it being on there since 1965, and it's not biodegradable, these dusts, what happened is they broke down and they break down. And so any site disturbance creates dust, oh my gosh. Now you're,
But shooting itself, people say mining the lead shot. Well, lead shot comes out, but so does lead dust.
right. But the issue
You
is,
can't mine the dust.
right, and that's the problem. The dust, the biorepentzine, has to be disposed of in a EPA site because it's highly toxic. And after, we've been using biodegradables for quite a while now with 5 million, but the problem is, the good news is for us, it's layered on top, so it's sandwiched. So if we continue this as a shooting range, which is what we're pleading for, that there won't be any site mitigation. It'll be, we can continue on, and according to the EPA and everything else, we continue on. But if you want to repurpose the land to develop to something else, then you've got an issue, because it has to be cleaned up before it can be developed.
Okay.
There's no option with that.
Any other questions for Steve?
Can, according to your research, can we maybe sell it to somebody and say as is?
You cannot.
Why not?
Because the county, the government agent, well, the landowner is responsible for that. If they reneged in any way, it has to be done before they can develop, period. Whoever pays for it. But the county is on the hook for full payment if they reneged or if they didn't do it.
Kind of like the Silver Valley. They'd love to say, you buy it as is.
Correct, and they can't do that.
Can't do that.
You have to have full disclosure now that we know what's there. It has to be fully disclosed in the documents, in your process that you're going to put out for bid, and it has to be cleaned up. You don't have an option with that with the EPA, because it's CERCLA means Superfund. It's a Superfund site. We didn't know that.
So Steve, let me ask you this. If you retain ownership, or actually we'd retain ownership, but if you continue to use it as a gun club, are there any EPA requirements?
That's where we get into, we're following everything. We've been good stewards already, but we want to get the certification, and we want to dot the i's and cross the t's and give it to the county, because you're a landlord. So we would give it to you, and we would follow their guidelines within. We can't disturb that site.
But you get an approved plan by?
Yes,
by-
it has to be, right,
by
we're
whom?
appointing.
Not the county.
No, it's by the EPA.
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 Yeah, it's a stewardship plan. That we have to submit a stewardship plan to the EPA. This is what we're going to do. And then once that stewardship plan is addressed and accepted by the EPA, then we get a certificate of recognition from the EPA. Then annually, we will have to submit what we have done to the EPA, that we're good stewards of this property.
In accordance with the plan?
Correct.
And of course,
Absolutely.
we
We-
get copies of that.
Oh, yes, you will have copies of that, the county would.
What is it precisely you would be doing? I know you mentioned charging 25 cents per shot.
Oh, that's for the
Around.
cleanup.
That's for the cleanup.
That's for the cleanup. But what we have to do is, one, we have to make sure that our shot zone, the crown, that we don't expand that. We have to take care and make sure that most of the shot lands in a specific area, so we.
Shot fall area.
The shot fall area, which is a fan, it's like a 45-degree arc, is what you have to look at from where a person is shooting. So from corner of property to corner of property, we overlap. That's why our 27 acres overlaps into the middle portion.
Can you come out there with any shotgun shell and shoot it?
No. Part of what we have to do is limit the type of shot that they use, which is lead shot. The size of the shot has to be the same. It can't be larger than 7.5 and can't be smaller than 9. And the powder that we have is called Dram's equivalency, cannot be greater than 3.0.
So you can't use a Magnum shell?
Correct, you can't, because that would throw the shot farther out there. It would just expose more land. So we have to follow their guidelines.
But you've been following that for a long time.
We have, but I gotta tell you, it's by happenstance. It's by good management from the club, good practice from the club, good due diligence. We've discovered all this since we had MT2 come out. They're the ones that said, oh, because this is new with the APA, this pyropensine is not good for a lot of shotgun shooting ranges, because they'll go in and just, bring a tractor and dig it up or whatever, and you can't do that because the airborne dust, it's highly toxic.
Okay, so in your proposal that we sign a long-term lease with the club, what do you anticipate we charge?
We're a nonprofit club. The problem is, the challenge that we have is we are a nonprofit club. So everything we charge is bare bones minimum. We're competitive in the market area. So you know what you charge us now? Our net profit last year was $6,000.
Okay.
That was our net profit. Now, it was a COVID year, yes, granted that, but you go back in time and look at all the net profits over the last 20 years, and we bounce from losing money, making money, losing money, making money. A lot of it depends on the shot mining. And management, yes, and spending. But I think we have an excellent management team. I'm proud to serve along with the other board members, our new manager, the best since I've been there, and I've been there since 2004. We've got really proactive people. They're very conscientious. The whole desire here is to do things right, not the old boy club. We welcome women shooters. We welcome kid shooters, the youth team. Look at Ava and what she's experienced and stuff, and my son since 2012. So we would just go on. So as far as what you have to determine is what is the value of keeping a club there to Kootenai County. We can't afford much more. Yes, we can afford some more, but not much. Because what we want to do long-term, what we would love to do is offer, because what we also have is a capital improvement fund that we've established. Now, that was for upgrading our facility. But we wanted to, long-term, we would love to have some berms out there with trees and stuff planted to border our property so it's aesthetically, it's very good. Sound barrier, we're looking at long-term, a lot of good stuff to do if we can be there. And so that's where we want to spend our money is land improvement.
Thank you.
I have a question for
Yeah,
Stephen.
go.
Stephen, have we had an appraisal done yet?
We've not had an appraisal because if you go to a bid, you do not have to have an appraisal done. when
Okay.
you sell property.
So with the area changing so rapidly and me being able to digest all the moving parts with everything in the county, I'm not in favor of selling any land that's next to the airport at this point, because I think we need to protect it. Now, I would be in favor of doing kind of what we did with the OEM building and purchasing the land from the airport, and then, potentially working out a lease. And because I think that your idea is right. So you start now, you get a long-term lease, and then you're able to have that cleanup done by the end of your lease.
Right, we can
So-
accrue the funds.
Right, so then that way, when we get to this point in 25 years, you can come to us and say, okay, we do have another location, or, we are ready to move, and the cleanup's been done.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think I'd be in favor of looking at potentially the county taking over that land. I mean, to me, it's two separate issues. I don't want to give up any land next to the airport. We just bought 11 acres at the end of the runway. And so I'm really concerned about protecting the airport. So,
Go ahead,
So,
Stephen, please.
just so you make sure you're aware, the acreage just to the north of that 20 acres for the OEM building, it was 120,000 an acre. This is 60 acres. So we start talking, yes, we're gonna probably reduction for the gun club, the cost to clean up and things. But you're still probably, we put ballpark, just from talking with some realtors and things like that, $4 to $5 million is the estimate we're hearing. And if we start talking a lease rate, and we'd square things off with them, because the 27 acres is not a good lease for the airport. It fully isn't. I will fully admit that. Because makes weird angles. It's not a square lease. We don't like those. We would talk about a 35-acre lease. We're looking at about $800,000 a year.
but that's full market rate.
Full market rate.
Right.
If we have to charge that as an airport. If the airport continues to maintain the ownership of the airport, of the land.
So a round of Skeet would be $200, is that what?
Yeah, but the reality is, if I might interject, is that what Mr. Kjergaard is talking about, the ideal world of 60 acres where it's clean land. The position that we know now is that it's not. There's a portion that is not clean, so you can't use that fair market value. The fair market value of the property that we occupy and that we overlap to, that's what you have to consider. So, and I know what the EPA says about this, and if you guys want to choose,
I would agree completely with what Leslie's saying, and I would suggest it. I don't usually use this word, but I suggest in a good way, in this particular situation, we kick the can down the road a little bit.
Your mic's, it's not picking you up.
I was trying to turn it off so nobody'd hear me. Kick the can down the road a little bit and work together to find a permanent solution. Not do anything like sell the land or try to sell the land. I think that would be a mistake at this point.
and then to answer Mr. Kjergaard, what his statement is that in the FAA, that there are many exceptions for lease for non-aeronautical use land, conditional lease, because we're contaminated. You don't have to go fair market value. You do not.
Well, that's the kind of thing that I think we talk about later.
Yeah.
And not try to negotiate here. I think that would be a mistake.
Stephen, go right ahead.
It would also put out to the commission that, keep in mind, we had planned to use this money to fund our facilities expansions. So that becomes another burden onto the county of what do we do with that? Because we're slated to get 1.3 million for our SRE building. There's gonna probably be another million or so, maybe double that.
I remember you said that the SRE building was on hold because of the,
Well, we're bidding it out again, but we're seeing what's gonna happen with bidding it for full design, but if we have good bids, we'll continue, but the FAA actually just recently upped their number a little bit, so.
so the FAA is covering what they're gonna cover.
Covering a little bit more, but if it's 3 million, we're not gonna do it.
So what is your recommendation here, Stephen?
It's up to the board,
We
but,
realize that, but you
but,
guys have to advise us, I mean.
for the airport, it's best for us not to own the land. however that ends up being. If the county wants to purchase it, the county purchase it. If we sell it out to somebody else, the county sells it that way. But as I said last time, owning the gun club and the other property doesn't align with what the airport does. And that's where even the property, the OEM building, all that facilities, it's moving us away from what we do as the airport.
I understand that, but if an exception is allowable and allowable by law or by ordinance, let's just consider that for a moment. Is it possible to market the property, forget for the moment whether we purchase it, is it possible to market the property with the gun club there?
I'm not sure I agree with their interpretation of what the documentation says, because we're not removing them, because they're staying on as a tenant.
Sure.
There's different, we're not forcing them to leave and changing the use. The property's already been released by the FAA and cleared environmentally by the FAA.
Okay.
So that's where I'd have to research more on that. However, that's where I do believe we could do it. However, I'd have to research and look what the gun club is stating.
So from your perspective, would you rather see the property sold to an outside buyer or for the county to purchase?
I have no real opinion on that.
You don't have any preference?
Nope.
Okay. Refresh my memory. How much land are we talking? How much land is the gun club right now? Is that
It's like, they use about 27 acres.
27 acres?
But really, they're looking about 35 to 36 acres.
35 would be the,
About 36 acres, yeah.
Okay. And the property in question that would be potentially sold, big?
About 60 acres.
which includes the 35? Okay. That's the total. Okay.
There's additional 4 acres around Blue Water Technology Building. They have a 2 acre, and then there's a 2 acre.
And you
parcel.
estimated, and I think you gave us the figure before, the value of the 60 acres at how much per acre?
We were estimating right around 75,000 an acre
75K, okay.
for the whole 60 acres.
So we're looking at about $4.5 million.
Yep.
Okay. Understood. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. We're not going to make a decision today. This is something I think we need to individually mull over, but I think we should schedule a time and.
Well, I think the appraisal, if we don't have an appraisal, there's nothing to mull over.
We can get an appraisal done on the 60 acres if that's the direction of the board, and it'll take us about a month, but we can do that.
Okay. And I just suppose we'll just address this every airport update until we get it resolved.
Sounds good.
So you're saying you don't need the appraisal to market the property?
There's actually a clause that is, if you're bidding the property
anyway.
out, you don't need to do an
Right,
appraisal.
yeah, we should get it anyway.
Okay. we can do
I
that.
think we also need to get a legal opinion from our legal staff at the county as to whether we will have liability once the property's sold, if in fact
point,
it's
too.
found out to be contaminated.
I would recommend we reach out to Kaplan Kirsch if we're going to do that.
Why?
They are the legal experts on aviation. Our attorneys typically don't
They
deal with.
advised us on that other matter, Bill.
Well, I want somebody who can advise us on environmental cleanup in a real estate transaction.
I would still recommend we deal with Kaplan Kirsch for
Well,
aviation and
we can
aeronautical.
Enough. We can
Talk
take,
about
we can
that.
take that up later anyway. Okay. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Want to say anything?
No, I'm gonna hold public comment to the end. Sorry. Okay, because I want to make sure we get through the agenda.
Okay.
Okay. Steve, okay, so what's next? Okay, Kootenai County,
No.
Kootenai Humane Society building.
Yep, so this is.
Thank you, everyone.
So this was kind of brought up, it's kind of dealing with the Humane Society, and there's kind of a conflicting issues with their lease. It says in part of their lease that says that their structures shall be removed. There's another part of it that says they may be removed. So it's really kind of a board discretion anyways. I really need guidance from the board of what do you want to do? Do you want to make the Humane Society remove things down to foundation, or do you not want to make them remove it down to
Make
foundation?
them what?
Remove all their structures down to foundation or not remove it down to foundation?
So give us pros and cons. If they do, obviously, that's much easier, but
It's
it's gonna be
far-
something they can't afford.
Yeah, it's far simpler for us. Somebody eventually is gonna, either the county's gonna have to do it eventually, or they're gonna have to do it. That's the real crux of the situation. If we do choose to make them do it, it's cheaper for us, it's easier for us, we throw a fence up, we're done.
Right. Is that for hangar development?
We will never use it for hangar development. Once this is done, this area will always remain open space.
Okay.
Why is that? I know there's a reason, but.
It is because we could never access it with a taxiway. There's too much elevation change. There'll actually be a taxiway that is gonna be sitting
Yeah, you won't have the automatic
50
use.
feet away from the building itself. And it just doesn't work as an area.
Isn't it also an area where if an aircraft has a problem, it can come?
It's not so much there. It's in a part of our departure surfaces, the older departure surfaces, but they're shifting them, so they're shrinking. So it's changing a little bit. It's more of the taxiway safety areas. The building is gonna be very close to it on part of the expansions. But it kind of depends on what you want to do as the lease holder at the end.
And we're probably still a couple of years away?
They're probably 2 to 3 years, I think.
They're at 75% of their fundraising goal. At 90%, they'll borrow the rest. And apparently, they've exhausted their larger donors, so they're going after smaller donors. I imagine that's going to take some time. Yeah. So, yeah, you could be looking at maybe up to 2 years.
Okay. So I guess my first thought on this is to suggest to them that they put out it for demolition. Demolition's the wrong word. Kind of like what we did with the Romer House, where we put it in the paper like, hey, bid on this, come take all the building materials.
They're not gonna want that.
Well, it's just a suggestion if we're gonna require them to remove it.
You want to
I'll tell you what,
explore all
you require
possibilities.
them to pay for this, and you watch the public relations hit.
Yeah,
What's it going to cost us to demolish the damn
right.
thing?
That's just,
The problem is it's a 60s building. We don't know what's in it.
Right, asbestos mitigation, lead
You-
paint, all that
378,
stuff.
Yeah, you're gonna have to figure out what's in it, who's gonna pay for it. If you want my honest opinion, I think you approach them and say, let's split the cost. And do 50-50 on this. You guys, I think that's a fair solution for them. Because one, I think this lease is very ambiguous in how it says,
Right.
and splitting it.
until we know what it's going to cost, though, it's kind of silly.
I don't know.
Might cost $1, might cost $5 million.
It might.
Right.
Somewhere
Yeah,
in the-
when we got the quote to demolish Romer,
Yeah,
it was like 50.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think having a good idea of saying how, but having a thought process saying, we'll split the cost with you to
quote.
get it down to basically make it even. I think that's a fair solution between the two parties.
Okay.
But I think this is a one-time thing of a public entity helping another public entity, not something that's an existing continuation of
Right,
events.
but I can't agree to split it halfway unless I know how much it is going to be.
That's, I agree with that.
Yeah, let's find out, yeah.
It may be a historic building.
You know who, it was Cannon Hill. Cannon Hill was
They,
the one
and
that,
they do a lot of that. They
Yeah.
can tell you real quick.
Cannon Hill.
Yeah.
I'll talk with Vicky.
Once again, in 2 years, it could be a whole different ballgame. So I don't see getting a quote right now being helpful at all. I say as soon as they start construction on their new place, then let's revisit it and say, okay, here's a couple ideas. You get people to come in and take it apart, or we hire somebody to demolish it, potentially 50-50 split.
Yeah, and there's another option depending on where we're at with the FAA projects, that we could get the FAA to pay for it.
Okay.
Oh,
So
yeah, check into it,
It,
absolutely.
it just depends on timelines of when
Okay.
projects happen.
Right.
So we don't know.
Yeah, I suspect they're at least a year from breaking ground, if not two.
I'll talk with Vicky about it.
Yeah, talk with Vicky, yeah. Okay, now I see where it says may be removed, that's permissible as opposed to an imperative, and that's in the first paragraph under structures.
Yeah,
It
and
says
then
may be removed, okay, where does it indicate they should?
so if you,
Unless I'm missing a page.
Yeah, surrender of
possession.
possession. It shall
Shall
leave the
leave the
ground
ground- right,
surface in
in
a
a
condition
condition.
as nearly as possible.
yeah. So that's the crux of it, is when you have that says that, and you have another part that doesn't. To me, it's a bad lease.
When they took over possession, What was there? Nothing?
Dirt,
Okay, so the building was built, okay.
When was that? How long ago did they?
like the 60s, like 64.
Okay, I don't,
They've been there a long time.
Okay. You okay there then? So you're gonna talk with Vicky?
I'll talk with Vicky, kind of
Okay.
say where we're kind of sitting with that, where kind of the direction of the board a little bit.
Got it. All right, let's move on to the third and final item. Review of May 12, 2021 Airport Advisory Board meeting minutes. Welcome, Greg G. Feller.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief.
And Joan Genter, thank you.
I'll be very brief. Our focus of our last meeting was an update from Stephen, which he'll cover, but also the sewer fee resolution. It's our second time we've met on that. What we decided to do is this Thursday at 5 o'clock, we'll have a workshop here to talk about the sewer fee resolution, hopefully for the final time, so we can understand it. I will say, every time we meet on it, it seems to get better and more understandable. But our goal would be to, after that meeting, what the workshop is, to hold a special board meeting immediately after, and then hopefully bring a resolution to you for your consideration.
Stephen?
Yep, so
Thank you,
kind
Greg.
of give a brief kind of update with the sewer. I'm not proposing to change the rate. We're just gonna change it to a use-based fee structure. So there's going to be some massive rate changes, I'll be the first to say that, but it's because they use a lot of water, not because the rate change. For example, you'll have some people that go from about $270 to almost $1,000 a month. So it'll be a massive change, but it's because their water usage is so high.
So are you supposed to meet again with Hayden?
We're having a workshop to discuss basically whether we're gonna do caps, do like a 20 W, 30 W cap.
Gotcha.
Whether
Okay.
we do an implementation methodology. That's why I'm actually looking at, what I'm gonna be proposing is a 3-year phase-in methodology where we do a 40%, a 80%, and then a full 100%. That way it's over a 3-year period. Over that period, we'll review the water usage every year, we'll adjust things. But also during that 3-year period, the leaseholders can then install
An outflow.
an outflow meter. And if we have access to it, we can then take pictures of it, we can say, yep, and that 1 year you used that much, water went that much through it, that's what you did. So that gives people time to figure things out.
Sounds good.
That's what the plan is, at least internally. We've already talked to some of the big users about it too, and said, this is how you get around this.
If I could add.
Yeah, please.
I think that the way we saw it last time is that it looks a lot fairer. Those that use more pay more. I think the board was, at least I was kind of taken back on what the rate would increase for some large commercial users. And so we're going to understand that better and then move forward.
But I think
Stephen?
one of the cheapest things they can do is get an outflow meter as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's probably 10 grand to install one, but you'll save, that's a year, if some of these users, that's a year's rate. So, yeah, you might lose money the first year and a half, but it'll save you long-term. The airport users appear to still want us to not have a minimum rate, we'll say that, but
It's per the JPA, so.
ARBS charges us for 3 units, that's what we build our rate upon.
Yeah.
Is what it is. I don't know that's just what it is.
So passing through.
So,
Passing on.
any questions on sewer rates?
No.
So, speaking of rates, tomorrow we do have our other rates and charges that is on there. The only thing that's really changing is the T hangers, and that is really just moving to what market rate is.
and what is the market rate on T-hangers?
About $350 a month.
$350 a month, and is that roughly the same square footage?
Yep.
And what market are you using?
Our market.
No, I mean like Spokane?
No,
or-
our airport.
Okay, what are they charging for those in Spokane?
They're actually a little higher in Spokane.
Higher than 350?
Yeah.
Is there any area around here where they're lower?
There's a couple areas lower,
Smaller airports?
smaller airports.
Okay.
We're just at 350. Actually, if we're talking with the users, they're actually talking about going up to about 400. So what I might propose next year is actually moving to the average new rate for T-hanger, or the T-hanger leases minus 5%. That way, we're just moving along with them,
Market.
the market.
Are
instead.
our T-hangers in good shape in terms?
They're not in great shape, no.
They're not.
Which is why I'm saying we actually move behind them slightly.
So is that maintenance up to us
Yeah.
to do?
Yep.
But some are not well maintained at this point.
If the hangar users call us and say something's wrong with them, we'll go fix them, but I haven't had a phone call on them,
Okay.
so.
How many people are affected? Four?
Four.
Okay, and the four no?
Yes.
Okay.
So moving on to the kind of the other things, other projects, I did attach just a draft. If the board wants to continue with it, we can. It's still a draft. As I said, I don't agree with their interpretation completely. I'd have to read through what they're stating, because we're not changing the use, is where that's kind of where the things stem back to. But either way, board can decide. As I said, I don't care what we do with the property. We're also, airport-wise, we're gonna have a bunch of closures over the next couple of weeks due to painting and things like that, so we have a bunch of ongoing projects. The SRE building, we are bidding it out again, because we had some weird bid numbers coming in the last time we bid it. So we wanted to try again. Also, you'll see the SRE contract with Fisher in the next week or two. So we do owe them some money for, even if we just cancel the contract, it's about $35,000 that we owe them.
For the work they've done so
The
far.
work they've done so far. So, nothing major, but if we do continue through the project, we'll owe them more money. So we'll move forward there. As I said, too, the FAA is about $1.35 million right now for the SRE building. I don't like turning away free money from the FAA, especially when it's 100% grant, so that's why we're trying to bid the project out. Because we've already talked to the FAA about trying to move it into a different project, and the FAA said, nope, we're not doing that.
How big is the structure?
9,000, was it slightly over 10,000 square feet?
So 50 by 200.
It's not a huge building. It's actually a little bit, it's more of a deep, I think it's actually, 80 by something else, I don't remember what it is.
Is it insulated?
It is insulated, yes.
Running water?
It does have water, it does have power, just for washing of vehicles, has a bathroom in it, but doesn't have a sprinkler, but the cost of things has gotten a little ridiculous.
That's for sure.
And just the amount of people who, there's no contractors out there. I mean, they're all busy.
That's the other thing.
The biggest problem that seems to be is Amazon has basically been sucking up every single contractor and sub they can find.
point.
Basically paying overtime rates. So, kind of moving into the other projects going on in the field. D North is actually finished. We just did a walkthrough of it. We're going to be retaining about 10% for the project. We're going to be deducting probably about 20 to 30% for the asphalt, because they didn't do a very good job on it. They didn't meet specs. I'll be honest, we might get sued over the contractor because the contractor is too happy. The worst part, though, is it's 100% grant for us, and we don't see any of the savings.
Right.
So it's literally, we deal with the headache, but we don't see any of the savings. So it's one of those enjoyment things. And honestly, we've debated as a team between T.O. and myself whether we try to get this contractor listed as no longer able to bid. So it doesn't do bad work, it's just everything else that comes up. The decoupling, we're still working through some items with the FAA. The fence is actually going in today. Or tomorrow, they're installing power for the SRE area. So that should wrap up their project, other than some seeding. Snow removal, as we just talked about, is still ongoing. Gulfstream Road should be done by the end of the month and then be bid out. Speaking of that, we have 2 spaces left on the north side, and I actually have a meeting today, and I think that both those spaces are probably gonna have applications in from the north side. So the north side will be completely full. So, and everything, we are working on, pretty much every other spot that we are currently working on is leased out, or already has people submitted and on our waiting list to be leased. So,
Back to that 60 acres, the farthest north 20 acres. That can't be used for any type of aeronautical or hangar use?
it could be, but the issue is access. How do you get to it? And that was, originally it was shown as to being developed for aeronautical, but it was one access point for developing 60 acres. And that's a terrible design flaw, because you have 60 acres of, I don't know, 600 hangar development, and you have one access point, and you really need about 3 or 4, 5 access points for that. And if it would have been laid out better, where if we want to destroy the Hagedon hangar, a couple other hangar developments and cut across, we could do it, but that's a pretty substantial cost to do that.
Okay, what
And we-
else?
And we do have 100-odd acres on the north side we can develop easier.
With better access?
With better access to utilities, it's just, the cost is gonna be just as much, if not a little cheaper, to do that on the north side. So, everything costs money.
So are you still able to get us what your fund balance is and what you're projecting that the match for the SRE versus what, the sewer cost, which we may have a way to fund that, and so wouldn't come out of the airport funds,
For
even though
the-
it's gonna be repaid?
For the sewer stuff, yes, we're just, as soon as we determine what the rate we're gonna go with, our sewer fund is gonna be much better into the future.
Two separate things. I meant the infrastructure. that you
Infrastructure,
mentioned.
the infrastructure, actually, we're working with TO and I actually have about a 5-year plan of projects ongoing of what we would be able to do really soon, or should have that to you by this
Do you
week.
know what the fund balance there is?
Our fund balance sits about $1 million right now.
And then how much do you need for the SRE building?
Under normal bidding times, I would say about $500,000. Under these bidding conditions, could be 1.5 to 2. That's the problem.
Assuming the FAA comes up with how much? 1.3, was it?
1.3, 1.4. Because everybody, when we started this project, even Fisher thought that this should be about 1.8, all in costs.
It ain't gonna happen.
And then everything, I mean, the structural steel joists right now are about 6,000 a ton, when in December they were 1,500 a ton. So you look at that cost difference in 5 months, but if 5 months from now it drops back down to 1,500, I don't know.
You know, that's a good point, because I was looking at some garage sheds, whatever, prefab kind of thing. And they had their prices posted. This is out across from Lowe's. And prices were crossed out, and they said at 30%. And it might have been a little bit less, but they were suggesting, I think, 30%.
Yeah.
Well, lumber futures are
Oh, forget
expected
it.
to go down, so, in July.
They're worried about cement right now, though, but
Yeah.
the commodities are going to take turns, I think.
And that's what everybody is hearing, is it's just, you're gonna pick one and they're all gonna jump, but at some point, everybody keeps saying sometime in December is when you're gonna hear a drop. So, we're trying to convince the FAA to just give us a grant based upon an estimate. They can do it, they just don't like to. But our program manager doesn't want to. So,
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So, when we are given a grant by the FAA for a project that is infrastructure, and cost of labor or cost of goods and services go up, can we go back to them for additional funding on that?
So typically, the FAA only really likes to do grants when they have a contract in place, and that's just is what, that contract is your contract. We're trying to let the FAA, because they can do it, and they've done it a few times so far this year, and they've agreed to a grant price with the knowledge that if the labor goes down or the cost goes down, they will move forward with the project, but if the costs continue to stay as is, they'll just get the money back at a later date. Because that's what happens, if you don't touch the money within 3 years, the FAA just takes the money back anyways.
Okay. What else?
We continue to work on other projects, the utility cost projects, we are almost done with it. I saw it right before I went out last week. There's a couple modifications. We are looking, I can tell you, TO did update the airport road. To update that is about $5 million. We have a total projects cost of, if we start looking at starting doing projects on the airport that we could do outside of the SRE buildings, things like that, if we start wanting to do updates to utilities, are somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10 million though, just on projects that we could do, if funding's available.
Okay.
And then eventually it makes it to that list that we're looking at.
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
And that's really all I have. Oh, the tower.
Oh, the tower, yeah.
So we also asked about doing a summer tower, and went down 2 different avenues with this. Did the FAA, and the FAA said that they are not able to support the tower this summer due to staff concerns. Also reached out to Tower Tech, which is the Northwest region kind of air person that does it as a temp tower, and came back with a number of between $3,000 and $4,000 a day. So that puts us at about $100,000 to $120,000 per month. And I would say that some days we need a tower, and I think it's not a terrible thing that we went through this exercise of finding out how much it costs. But I don't know how we support and justify having a tower, especially considering we really should probably have a tower sometime from June 3rd, 15th-ish, to June 1st, from then until Labor Day. But that's $250,000, $400,000, depending on how long it is. And I don't have that space in my budget, and I know the county doesn't want to come up with that funding out of the blue. So we researched this and found this, and it just isn't going to happen.
Now, what about the Forest Service?
So Forest Service has the ability to call in a tower. However, this year, I don't know what's going to happen with the FAA because some of their policies for COVID are quite ridiculous, is what I heard. Because they have to have a nurse on site and do testing. They do a rapid test before they go in and active, and it's just...
There's something with a 99.6 or 0.8 survival rate.
I don't know. I stopped asking questions, and when I listened to the guy, and I was like, okay, this sounds excessive. So that's where we kind of sit with that. I don't know. The Forest Service will pay it. They don't care. But they plan basically as soon as they go active, about July 11th or 10th or 15th or whatever it is, they're going to go active. They're going to request one. So they'll have one. On another note, there's another tower. Speaking of a tower, on 95, there is a tower going up. We are aware of it. We actually opposed it as the airport.
Where is this?
95 and Honeysuckle?
No,
Orchard.
no. Yeah, it's...
Orchard.
No, isn't it past... I thought it was past Hayden. I thought it was north of Hayden.
It is north of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's maybe between Lacey and Wyoming or between Miles and Lacey.
Who's
Yeah,
doing
it's-
this?
It's Hayden Lake Irrigation, or Irrigated Tracks, or whatever their name is. They're building a new, 5 million gallon water tank, and we opposed it as the airport because it actually does affect our approaches. It actually raised our minimums for our smallest category of aircraft up. City of Hayden didn't like it either. They wanted it elsewhere, but because of state law, they were kind of tied. Their hands were tied too. So it's there.
And it's ugly.
It is ugly. And it is big.
You know, speaking of the Forest Service, if we happen to have a dry or high fire season, do you expect more firefighting aircraft?
Yes,
Will that impede some of the private traffic?
yes.
Okay.
We will, the big thing though is if we're smoky,
They
nobody
don't want to
flies.
fly anyway.
Nobody flies anyways.
Got it.
But if we're clear and it's fire south or within 100 miles, we're busy all the time.
Right.
But if we're smoked in, we're socked in, we're a dead airport basically because nobody wants to do anything. It just really depends on where that smoke is. But if everything's south and west, or excuse me, south and east, we'll be probably 2 million gallons worth of retardant flown. Just depends where it is.
Anything else?
Nope.
Questions for Stephen? Public comment? Yes, sir. And you live where, we don't need your address, just town?
Oh, I live in Ayton.
Okay.
Two comments. One, this, as I recently listened to this,
Step up to the
Yeah,
microphone
just,
a little bit.
there you go.
you may want to consider to supplement your tower during anticipated heavy times as the Air Force Reserve. They have mobile towers, and they're always looking for training. So that's just an idea. Second comment is on the 60 acres.
Yes, sir.
I'm a member of the club and a director, and it just occurred to me, because nobody's brought it up yet, that if the 60 acres was resurveyed, one area sold at fair market value by the airport, and the other retained by the county, and that would just, it hasn't been said, I just thought I'd just throw that out.
That's a thought, yeah.
Just, just resurvey it and split it off. Maybe that would help with the effort, with funding for the additional FAA.
I don't think we need a resurvey. We would just go 40-20 because the split was just done this year.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the
Yeah.
rules are, but that was a thought anyway, I had for you, so, anyway, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Anyone on the phone? Hearing none. 9:58, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Stephen.